don't know, now you know. You are an important constituency, an important voice for this administration. So I hope that these briefings have been helpful, and we want to certainly make sure that we continue the collaboration. I guess I just, open up. I'm actually the first Black deputy mayor in the history of the city of New York, and the first Black woman, right? The third woman. So I feel very blessed to be in this role and to really be of service. So I want to just open it up for whatever questions that you have, so I can talk to you more about what we're doing in this administration and my role, and also the other deputy mayors and chiefs that are working to advance the agenda for the city.
Great. So let's start the Q&A. As you know, we're gonna go round and take one question per reporter. If we have time, we go for a second question. Just please asking you to identify yourself and your outlet. And let's start with the ladies at the table. We'd like to go first.
My name is Yasmin Atab. I'm co-founder of the American Media Foundation, and also a mom. That's the mom of the. I have 3 kids, and also I'm a founder of a nonprofit organization Just for the Women. That's 2017. So I have a lot of questions regarding also the women. So should I say the question or?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my question is about technology and media. Many mothers are concerned about the impact of technology and the media on their children's development. They may worry about their children spending too much time on the screens, or being exposed to the impact to inappropriate content, like the full-time job. So if there's any.
No, that's a big concern, and the mayor actually just spoke about this briefly. TikTok is creating all of these challenges for young people to follow. I mean, they're jumping on the tops of trains. We've seen some unfortunate deaths. We've looked at the impact of social media on women and girls and their perceptions of themselves. There is a large percentage that are experiencing depression, suicidal ideation, and kind of other things that really drive this. So this is an area of concern for the administration, and the mayor has certainly met with some of these platforms, and will continue to do that, about what some of the issues and dangers are. And the challenge is sometimes technology and things advance and regulation lags, right? So there's not, the regulatory environment is not up to speed on what we need to really rein in some of the practices and things that we're seeing in the digital environment and social media, particularly as it relates to children. So we advocate for that at the federal level, at the state, and whatever we can be doing here. So some of the things that we've been putting in place to mitigate some of those impacts, because we don't control these companies, and that would really come from the federal level, but to mitigate it, we're launching a mental health effort across our schools. This is how they grew up. They were raised in a digital environment. Their phone is their life, and they can do many things on the phone. So we're also trying to use it to our advantage. There'll be a telehealth initiative where young people can access mental health services through digital assets, which we think will be very helpful. We're also trying to work with other media that targets young people and made by young people to encourage them to do positive things as opposed to negative things. So that's another area that we're looking at as well. But it is a big problem. We're trying to address the mental health issues, the public safety, a lot of the crimes that young people are committing, like they're promoting on social media or they're daring each other to do it. So the other agencies, Department of Youth and Community Development, the NYPD, are looking at ways to kind of intercept that messaging, to shift it and change it, but also to figure out how do we address some of the issues and problems. But it's a complicated thing, but it is a priority for us.
Monica?
I'm Monica Adamski. I'm representing Radio Rampa. We're targeting Polish Americans on the East Coast. I would like to continue this topic, if you allow, because this is important for us. So I'm wondering, since this is also the month celebrating women, Would you have anything in mind to say to the ethnic community women? Do you think they carry any special role in this city? And would you be willing to maybe host a meeting with the women of ethnic communities, like Polish community, to kind of show them the way or like share your experience
I think
and
we would
broaden
want-
that connection?
Absolutely. I think, this is an administration that has a historic number of women in leadership roles. Right now, all of the deputy mayors, except for the deputy mayor of public safety, are women, ethnic women. I think we have the first Filipino woman deputy mayor, the first Filipino deputy mayor, the first Muslim deputy mayor, and deputy mayor Joshi. So it's a very, very diverse group. If you look at our police commissioner, our fire commissioner, and across the administration, we want and believe in full representation. And for far too long, as you walk around City Hall, I walk around every day, and all the pictures on the wall are men, like every single one of them. And this mayor really believes in women's leaderships, and that women should absolutely have a seat at the table, because we bring that diverse experience of our gender, of our ethnicity, of our lived experience as mothers, as daughters, as sisters, and just as women in society. We have a unique experience, and so how we come to the table to inform and influence policies that impact the entire city, right? When you improve the trajectory of women, you improve the trajectory of everyone, and that is one of the things that we're very focused on as an administration. And we would love to do that as a really women-focused leadership.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, I'm Jean Wells, and I'm the editor of the Positive Community Magazine. My question would be about, I know that the mayor had developed programs around gun violence and getting guns away from, especially the children. I mean, every day you hear about 2 or 3 shootings outside of school.
Yes.
What kind of progress has been made? And, just what is happening with that, with those terrible things?
Absolutely. Walking into the administration on January, gun violence, the levels of gun violence were significant and really troubling. And immediately in the beginning of the administration, we had, 2 police officers that were killed. The incidences of gun violence against young children, right? The 11-month-old or the 3-year-old, and the shooters are, more and more young people, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And so it has been a big area of focus for the administration. About mid last year, we launched the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. And I co-chair that task force along with one of our community leaders who leads a crisis management network here in the city. We want every single agency in the city of New York, sanitation, probation, NYPD, Division of Youth and Community Development, Administration for Children's Services, everybody at the table to say this is our shared responsibility for this administration and for the city of New York. And we need to look at 2 things. One is interventions, and the other are preventions. So interventions are, when, the crisis, unfortunately, all the things that you were supposed to do upstream to mitigate somebody having a gun in their hand and shooting it did not work, and now you're at that point. So what do you do to increase arrests and incarceration? And if people are arrested for a gun crime and they are released, how are we making sure that they have support so that they don't go back and do that again, right? Recidivism. So there's a big focus on that from the NYPD, Department of Probation, and other agencies. We've seen a significant uptick in arrests, historic numbers, recovery of guns, and a decrease also in gun violence. But that's just dealing with the symptom. The root cause, what we've done with the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force is looked across the city, looked at all the neighborhoods. There are 30 precincts out of 77 that contribute to basically 100% of the gun violence. 30 precincts. There's 6 precincts that contribute to about 30% of all gun violence in the city. So the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, so we're gonna focus in on those 6 precincts and understand what are some of the social determinants of gun violence, affordable housing, access to educational opportunities for young people, mentoring, tutoring, workforce development. How many young people are out of school and out of work? Are there mental health issues? Is there trauma-informed care? Young people that are aging out of foster care or that are in homeless shelters, are they getting the services that they need? And so this task force, made up of every single agency, developed a set of strategies to invest in those communities, and has been holding community convenings to hear from community, is this right? What else should we be doing? Where are the gaps? And so for each one of those 6 initial neighborhoods, there's a plan of action that we'll be executing to deal with the upstream causes of gun violence as well. And we're gonna be monitoring and measuring our progress as we go.
Great. Mona?
Hi, thank you, Jose, for convening this roundtable, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Wright, for meeting with us. So I want to piggyback on the question regarding the gun violence, but I want to take it a step further and touch on the gaps. So, Little African News, we are the only newspaper, we're a weekly newspaper, and we're the only newspaper that targets the African diaspora. So, continental Africans, Black immigrants from the Caribbean, as well as Central and South America, because we have a lot of brothers and sisters from the diaspora in Central and South America. I myself am originally South African, but I grew up all my life here in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy. But I'm also a parent, and a very active parent. And when it comes to public safety and school safety,
Yes.
as well as the gun violence, this is my question for you. And let me just say, I attended the community conversation that you had in Brooklyn with A.T. Mitchell. Last week I attended the event with Reverend Cohn. We actually advertised full page sponsored ads for your event with Reverend Cohn in the paper, which I have for you. So this is the thing. You mentioned that you're targeting specific communities. Last week's shooting at MLK, the name of the shooter, Sheikh Koulibaly, that's an African name. The week before that, the shooter in Brooklyn, over there in Sunset Park, that one's name was Usman Diallo. 2 young African youth shooting at the place. School safety has confiscated guns from African youth, bringing them into the school that I know of. And then I also know of African youth who have been shot outside of their schools. The point is, it's African youth, African youth, African youth. And in our community, from what I've observed, I don't see a concerted effort to target the African youth. And we're going to write an article about it because I believe it's out of control at this point, because at some point, someone is going to pick up.
Your question?
My question is, in addition to what you described as what you are trying to do, what efforts are there being undertaken to engage and target the African youth, do the intervention and the prevention to that community? Because it feels like the community is forgotten with everything. So how can we work together with you? Because I don't want to just write about the problem. I want solution and resources from this administration so that we can share with our community, because this gun violence affects everyone.
No, and I think that is wonderful. I really appreciate you bringing it up, because we are focused on the data. And so the demographics, so that's, there's neighborhood data, but then there's also other data points that when we see spikes, we want to lean into, right? So there certainly is a focus on boys and young men, because those are the people who are most involved. But we also have to look a little deeper, which is what you're saying, right? What is the ethnic group of the people who are, and actually it's growing with girls, so that's an area that we want to focus on as well. So I think that, in answer to your question, we want to work with you. And so we definitely think that because there are different nonprofits and organizations and ecosystems that envelop different ethnic communities, that we absolutely want to tap into and lean into and partner with as part of the solution. So we should definitely follow up.
Next.
Thank you, Sheena Wright, the First Deputy Mayor, for inviting me. And I'm Sohana Nasreen from a newspaper Brooklyn, North American. I have a question.
Brooklyn.
Sorry?
What's your newspaper's name?
Sohana Nazmi.
What's your newspaper's name?
Brooklyn, North America.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question, because, since, COVID-19, we are still recovering, okay? But the, problem is, the women from Bangladeshi community, they're still suffering from mental stress and depression. So you know that, language barrier is a big barrier over here. So is there any, mental health, place so that they can, explain them by their own language? Is there any,
Well, yes, so,
system in the city?
yes. Our Commissioner of Health, Dr. Bassan, his specialty in his whole career, his focus was mental health, and that was one of the reasons that the mayor chose him, because he understood deeply and appreciated what a significant issue it was. And so I think it was, I don't know if it was a month ago, that we released our mental health plan and strategy, that is targeting, and the cultural responsiveness and making sure that there's the right language access, and that we're meeting the needs of the very, very diversity that we have is critically important. So there are a set of resources that are being rolled out as a part of, for that. So the focus is on young people. So there's an area that's focused on there. There's a focus on people with severe mental illness, who are a group that's often left out. And there's also a focus on substance abuse and the opioid crisis. We are going to be also releasing a women's health agenda, and mental health will be a central part of that. There's a summit we're having on the 30th of March. You know, we did some preliminary announcements of things that we were working on, but women's mental health is going to be, as you can, all the women in the administration, right? It's going to be a priority. So I would say to you, more to come, but we definitely appreciate the pandemic in particular had more strain on women. We had to take care of kids, to go to work and do all the things, make sure they did school, all the things. It was just, and we talk about the burden, it was disproportionate, and the stress and strain of that, we definitely appreciate, so it is a priority.
We will follow up with you on future events, and Famud is here.
Hi, good afternoon. Paul Philip, Editor-in-Chief of Caribbean American Weekly, Workers' World Today, the Influence Journal, and Editorial Consultant for New Black Voices. Thank you so much for meeting with the ethnic media today. I just want to say off topic, you're the prettiest first deputy mayor.
Oh, you're very sweet.
But looking at the education system, I'm sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, so I sound like a frog, but looking at the education system, New York City has the most segregated school system in the country. So as a woman, as you know, in this administration and a woman of color, do you think that open enrollment is the answer, yes or no, and what suggestion do you have on that topic?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think it is absolutely the most segregated school system in the country. And it follows the patterns of the segregation of our neighborhoods and communities. And, you know, because most young people for elementary school, they go to their zone school, which is, you know, and our neighborhoods are typically very segregated. And then so when we look at the demographics of the New York City public school system, I think we are maybe at 80% people of color, actually, Black, Hispanic, Asian communities, and maybe 20% white students. And so, you know, I think what we are focused on, and what I know the chancellor is focused on, is ensuring that every neighborhood and community has good quality schools and good quality options. We do want to have diversity within our school system, but that's not the end result, right? It's a means to an end. The end result is that we have high quality schools. And so having a fully diverse school system, because of our segregation patterns and housing, will be difficult to achieve. And what we're really, really focused on is how do we make sure that we improve the quality of schools, that we make sure that our young people can read. Right now, only 49% of kids, Black, white, green, or yellow, can read on grade level in the school system. 65% of Black and brown kids cannot read on grade level. That is a big focus of this administration. It's basic, it's fundamental, it's the biggest predictor of high school graduation, making sure that young people know how to read by 3rd grade. The second big priority of the administration, it's called Bright Starts, which is learning how to read, and Bold Futures. So many young people are in school and it's not connected to real life. It's not preparing them for work or entrepreneurship. And so there's a big focus on career-connected learning, and we really want to focus all of the interventions and efforts to make sure that kids have a bright start and a bold future, in particular communities that have been disinvested in over time.
Thank you.
So,
Hi, yes. Hi, Sheena. So Wadi Morris, founder, publisher, weekly reader. Do you remember?
Absolutely.
Survey, right? Yes, thank you for that. So, we cover the 2.6 million residents of Brooklyn. My question is, I don't know if you saw the article, I'm sure you did. January 31st was published in the New York Times that said that Black families are leaving the city. So 200,000 have left, which is almost 10% of the population, and it continues to grow. I personally have been here since 1997, so 25 years now. And I can count on one hand the number of my friends that are still here that were here when I first came. We are leaving, but the issue goes even further beyond just housing. So I'm wondering what the administration is doing to address that. It's a very layered and a very deep sort of issue that's happening right now, and it's endemic. So I was just wondering what the administration is doing to address that, if anything.
No, absolutely, and I think, as you said, it's layered. It is about housing. We've been looking at the data and the patterns. I'm sure many of your friends move back down south, right, where some of
Their
them,
hometowns, more affordable cities.
right, more affordable cities, and good school systems, right, where they don't have to, where they make sure they have more confidence in the opportunities, educational opportunities for their
Because it's more
children.
than low income, it's a huge
No.
segment of the middle class population.
And a lot of Black families, bought their homes back in the 1990s, and they appreciated their value, and now they're multimillionaires as well, and they're going to get a return on their investment, and they're going to live in other neighborhoods and communities across the country where they can really, kind of benefit from all of that equity that they've built up as well. So like you said, there's multi-factors and multi-layered, and I think the other thing that we're also looking at is that the population isn't growing. We're not having more births in the Black community to offset the out-migration, which is another challenge. And that also, this is, Black women are 9 times more likely to die in childbirth in New York City, and the infant mortality rates are, just disproportionately high. So we are absolutely looking at all of those data. This administration is very data-driven, and so we're looking at the disparities within the disparities, and there's specific things that are, we think, driving and impacting the Black community that we do want to focus on and address and have some real goals around, turning the tide. But similarly, the Asian community is actually the fastest growing number of people in poverty. And so, but it's also there are disparities within those disparities, because the Bangladeshi community has its different outcomes than the Chinese community. And so we're trying to be very intentional and specific about what are we bringing to bear as government, because sometimes it can just be like a big policy up here, but it hits people differently. And so we're trying to be very, very sensitive to that, because what we want is, a healthy and robust city. We want everybody to have what they need in order to thrive in the city. And we are seeing that there are some populations that are leaving and that are decreasing because of some specific challenges, as well as some communities that are actually growing and have specific challenges. So we're trying to address that. So we have, for the first time ever, a Mayor's Office of Equity that is actually looking at that data across different communities, very specifically trying to understand the needs, and really making sure that every agency has that data, is looking at it, and has plans to address what some of the challenges are. So more to come, but it is very troubling.
Thank you very much. Jose, first of all, thank you so much for never ever as an ethnic community, at least my ethnic community has been so inclusive and so a part of everything that is happening.
Thank you, Mayor Erika.
It's amazing.
Jose is so nice to
You
you.
organized it, so I have to say thank you first and foremost, and it's an amazing honor and pleasure to be here to meet you, Deputy Mayor Wright. So, I represent, my name is Anna Federman, and I represent the Russian-speaking and the Ukrainian-speaking community of New York through, we're a Russian-speaking radio. And my question would be obviously about, the migrant situation that is, a problem, we all know it's a problem in our city, it's creating a lot of problems, and part of the problem is my community as well, because a lot of migrants from Ukraine have came here throughout this last year during the crisis, or during the war. And I would like to know, if there's a chance, first of all, we don't have the data. I tried to find out the data, how many actually, families immigrated, or, I don't know if we can call it immigration, but came to New York that are from Ukraine, or even from Russia as well, because some people fled, obviously, for political reasons as well. So, how many people are here that are Russian speaking from Ukraine or Russia? How are they being taken care of? How many of them are going to stay here? Is there anything that our community can do to support? Because we're doing some stuff on our own, we have fundraisers and, some organizations, but mostly those organizations help the people abroad in Ukraine. But I think it's also very important for us to somehow unite and help our community here in New York. So, basically, I would like to know more information about how many migrants from our community are here, and what can we as a community here can do to support them. What is being available to them? Obviously, there are children involved there and women involved there. So, are there special programs, or are there programs that can be extended to them? And so I just would like to know if there's.
It's a great question, and I think, so much of the focus have been on migrants and asylum seekers, from, South America and Venezuela, Central America. And there are a lot of migrants from Ukraine, Russian-speaking countries, as well as African countries that are just kind of not necessarily in the press at all, right? You don't read about it as much, or you don't read about it anymore. So the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, our Commissioner, Manuel Castro, is amazing, and has that data, and we are tracking from the African community, as well as the Eastern European community, as well as the South and Central American community. And what we know, whether it's war, or whatever the conditions are, it's only gonna grow, right? With climate change, natural disasters, unrest around the world. So as part of our asylum seeker blueprint, we are creating like a standalone office to really manage some of the challenges and address some of the issues. And so part of that is making sure that we have this network of culturally relevant community-based organizations that we're in more strategic partnership with. So we definitely will follow up with you and your outlet and community to make sure that we continue to build that out together, because it has been just in the past 15 months, from Ukraine, from South and Central America, from the African continent, it has been a significant influx of people in need of help and support.
Vamos to follow up with you. We're gonna connect that. You have a question?
My name is Lavina Nirvani, and I have an online magazine called Let's Feed with Lavina. It's aimed at the South Asian community over here, which is actually really pretty big. And it's a very mixed bag actually, because Indians have been coming here since the 60s. And so there are some very successful people and some not so successful people. I mean, you see the people who are running card shops, who are running, cabs and things like that. So I was just wondering, because There's some people who need help and some in fact who can give help. So I wanted to reach out to you for both of them. One was like, first of all, there's a language problem for many of our South Asians, you know, the Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, or even Indians. So if there was something where people could reach out, if they're, because they are kind of a shy community, they don't really want to show if they need something, they don't really come out and say it. So if there's a way to help them out, because I do meet some and I don't know what to tell them to do. And the other was when the successful community is there, their children have grown up here, they're all doing very well. And we do send a lot of money back to India too. But at the same time, this is our country, you know, this is our home country now. So we do give over here. So I was wondering if there was a way we could collaborate with you, where the need is really greatest when we have the money to give, we'd like to give. We've done it already in the Bronx and in some summer camps for the children of incarcerated women. We've been giving over here. So I thought that maybe you could guide us on how to do that.
That's fantastic. And so we do have a mayor's fund for the city of New York, which is a separate 501c3 philanthropic organization, but it raises resources to help support communities that are in need and priorities for the administration. And so we'd love to continue to kind of grow and expand that base of individuals or institutions that want to help and be philanthropic. So we'd love to connect you there. And then also the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, as I mentioned, is keeping the data on some of the needs for specific communities. So if you have more data and information, and I'm sure you'll have Commissioner Castro, if he hasn't already, you address this group to do that, because that will be, you know, and he will appreciate the partnership and the connection
Yeah,
there.
we got that, because we are doing it so.
Right,
We're
to be
gonna,
in a
Commissioner Castro too, will do that. So now we're gonna go in the back and have the right to ask questions.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, okay, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You came, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
My name is Julie Wang. I'm from largest Chinese weekly newspaper, The Beijing Times, and also we are one top of website. Since 2 years ago, we have English newspaper as well. We have what mentions focus on promote traditional culture for Chinese community, and certainly we also want to spread the culture to other community. So we have established the English newspaper as well. So we know, I'm really happy to hear from you today. Make many solutions from fundamentally, not only just surface, from culture, from education. This is very important. So we are an independent Chinese media, and because many media were controlled by Chinese government, and we report many local news, especially government, like many event. We very close connection with New York City, and we have a questions. Right now, more and more, problem, like some Chinese Asian, some Chinese women, Asian women were attacked, and we from the education, this angle educate for our Chinese community and other community, and we every week we have lots of like very good content, education, culture, and we before we receive many
go. Lotus, do you have a question?
Because I was late because of traffic.
Yeah, no,
I don't
you
know
have a
whether they
question.
talk about public safety. They do talk about public safety.
Okay, yeah, but do you have a question? Do you have?
Public safety.
Okay,
I'm concerned
go
about
ahead,
public safety.
go ahead.
Still Chinatown have a very high rate of,
I'm sorry, we identify the media outlet that you can. Yeah.
My name is Lotus from Singtao Daily. It's a Chinese newspaper. So what we really concern is still about the public safety. So since that they have a lot of shelter, because of fair share, they have a lot of shelter. It really make the Chinese senior afraid to come out. So public safety is still like a big thing in the Chinese community. So do you think the mayor office can do more on this to?
No, absolutely, and, last night, the NYPD held the first, you've all heard of ComStat, probably, it's like a accountability system where, the police have to respond and make sure that they're looking at the data and looking at some of the challenges in neighborhoods and communities, and they're really accountable. So last night was the first community ComStat, where the community was invited and they had all the chiefs and all the brass and all the commanding officers and the community affairs and all the people, and they were looking at the data in that community. So whether it was hate crimes or robberies or burglaries or noise complaints or whatever it was, and the leadership had to account for and be accountable for the results. And the community was able to ask specific questions and also make specific recommendations.
I don't want to add more that because I think the Chinese community is very desperate. Just 2 days ago, this is like a young black guy go to the Chinese store to steal things and throw away. They don't even go to report to the police, but they just circulate in the group that people really upset about that.
So I think communication is important, and so I think we can certainly follow up for that community in particular. How do we make sure that there's more opportunities to communicate and share what's happening with the NYPD and what ideas people have as well to promote safety in the community. So we can certainly follow up with that.
And also, regarding this topic, I want to say we are launching now citizen already in place, but we're inviting all of you, and we will follow up. Deputy Mayor Phil Banks, he is offering the
weekly public safety briefing. I sent an email out today. We are going to be doing a training tomorrow at 2 o'clock. This is to address the issue of public safety around the city. So we're going to be doing a training at 2 o'clock where you will be invited to a live public safety meeting happening every week from Deputy Mayor Phil Banks.
So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we hope to see you all of that in that soon. It's a WebEx meeting. Yeah, it's just a training for them.
Great.
To be part of the
Wonderful.
every
Friday.
Every Friday. Yes. Okay, let's go now open to the back. Rick, you have a question?
Rick O'Connor from Roosevelt Islander Online. So Roosevelt Island is going to have a big problem coming up starting in May with transportation. The MTA is closing down the 63rd Street Tunnel, and there's not going to be any train service whatsoever in one direction or the other from May until October. So a lot of people in the community are wondering if there's anything that the Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives can do to influence the MTA to provide shuttle bus service from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan. The MTA is willing to provide shuttle bus service to Queens, but because there are a lot of elderly people, a lot of disabled people, and a lot of school kids who need to get to Manhattan, the shuttle service to Queens really isn't going to be satisfactory. And there hasn't been any kind of reaction from the MTA about doing that. So I'm just wondering from the city's point of view, is there anything that can be done about something like that? And also, Mayor Adams visited Roosevelt Island a while ago and he received a list of concerns. And he said that the list was being given to one of the deputy mayors. And I'm not sure if it was you or if it was someone else. And I'm just wondering if there was any update on that.
Thank you, and so, I used to be the Deputy Mayor of Strategic Initiatives, and now the first Deputy Mayor, but the good news is that the Deputy Mayor for Operations, where the Department of Transportation reports into me, Deputy Mayor Mira Joshi. So I will definitely share this with her and get your information so we can make sure that they understand. not only what the concern is, but what the recommended solution is. We love people who come to us with ideas to fix the thing, right? So that is very helpful. And so we'll look into that. And I will also follow up on the list of concerns. I've been in this role since January 7th, in this new role. So I'm not sure where that particular list went when that meeting was held, but if you have it and can connect me to it, I'll be happy to do that. And I'll also see with my colleagues if somebody else is looking at and addressing those
Okay,
issues.
thank you.
Okay. Rico, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Hold on, Rico to go first.
Yeah.
Rico.
Rico Dupuy, I'm the director of Radio Soleil Edition radio station. My question is about public safety. President Trump sees reverse racism as what is really targeting him. And look at Fannie Lewis in Georgia, Alvin Bragg here, and Leticia James. So he sees these through the lens of racism. Yesterday I was listening to a very popular conservative broadcaster, and he flatly said he invited the army to execute Barack Obama, Eric Holder, and Susan Rice, all blacks. People could look at this as just wishful thinking, but I see a tightening of rhetoric that is very, very dangerous, and I'm concerned about the possibility of the communities of color being targeted. Is this a subject of concern for the powers that be here in the city?
I think that it is probably a subject of concern for the nation, right? I think we have seen in the past 4 or 5 years, unfortunately, a lot of racial animus to many different communities, to all, many different ethnic communities, certainly that are represented here in New York City. And it is all being taken very seriously as people, the potential of people being targeted for their race, ethnicity, gender, identification, kind of all those things. And so there are, the Office of Hate Crimes, and it really kind of zeroes in on and monitors a lot of the rhetoric. I mean, every group represented in this room, whether it was, Trump's talking about, where the virus came from and how it was targeting particular people, or, on and on. And that's very real, and people take it very seriously and are mobilized to address it.
JR, do you have a question?
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm J.R. Giddings from the Reset Talk Show. Our platform is to the Caribbean American community and others, because we're very diverse. First, I want to thank, of course, Jose and you, Deputy Mayor, for this extraordinary conversation we're having this afternoon. I think it's important. But my question is, as we talk about the Women's History Month, the 4-day work week that's been talked about, is there an initiative behind that? Simply because, that extra day for mothers to be able to prepare, or mothers to, spend that quality time with family is important.
Yeah, so I think the whole world, right, is looking at what does kind of a different work, when work and home all collapse on all of us, as I said earlier. For women, I think it was particularly difficult and challenging and a lot to balance. And so coming out of COVID, and I really do feel like this spring is like we're coming out of, like, for real. Like last year we had the Omicron surge, and then it was like, Omicron. And then, but this is like, feels like the real coming back out of the hibernation. So what we're doing at the city is really trying to look at what are all the options. We just signed one of our first contracts, our labor deals with DC 37, which has a significant percentage of women in their workforce. And one of the conditions of that contract is to pilot and look at a different hybrid models and potentials for work. There's a challenge, as we know. Some jobs require, 5 days in person, some don't. And so how do you make sure that there's equity and that people who have to be like in person at a particular place for a particular period of time have get some benefit where other people's jobs don't necessarily require that. So it's gonna be a balance. And I think, we're looking at all of the data and the studies, we're looking at other cities, other countries and what they're doing to figure out what will be best for our workforce here for the city of New York, but other companies are in the city are looking at it as well. There are lots of different models, I think, that are being tested. I would say it's a new world, and I use the term COVID clarity, like we came out of COVID with some clarity, like, you know what? There's some things that would really be good if we did it this way, and that collective experience that we had going through that crisis and that pandemic, I think just makes us clearer about we need to do things differently going forward. So that is definitely on the table, and we're grappling with it and figuring out what the next steps are for the city, and lots of different companies are doing the same.
I like the call.
Thank you.
COVID clarity. Yeah, I think people are sitting at home, you're like, oh no. And then you're like, wait, what am I doing with my life? That was how a lot of people felt.
Hi, Mayor. I am Ruben. I'm representing Chicano newspaper today. I'm the head of tech. I don't really do journalism like that, but I'm here instead of my wife. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get into. So my first baby's on the way. And just a little bit of context. Bangladesh is, since I was born, I'm like 30 now, since I was born, we've only had female prime ministers. So the woman power thing, I'm born into it, totally, respect him, love him, serve him. But, so it's not really something that I want to suggest regarding women. Like, women already have it tough, 24/7, 365, right? And everyone does. But instead of having trainings for their mental health, and I'll tell you why I thought of this, right? So my wife is this really strong woman. Right? She's like she's like super powerful, like super crazy. Things that she can do, I can't, right? But since she got pregnant, and it's my first baby, so our first experience in this. Super happy, but I've seen this really vulnerable side of her, right? And I'm like, I didn't know that she never gets sick. I get pissed when she's sick, right? I'm like, I'm the one who gets sick. But I see her, she can't get up and do things like this, and I feel like, I think more than them getting trainings for mental health and stuff like that, I think it's the fathers. So if you're gonna make people do trainings, and if you're gonna have initiatives, teach the fathers, teach the sons, the brothers, I'll be the first one to go. I'm sure she'll tell you I have something to do.
That's great.
So.
I love that. I will take that back. I think that's a great idea.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and for this opportunity. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Famoud, and happy History Month to all the ladies here. It would be maybe a message that we're expecting from you, not a question. And as you said, this is the month for the woman, and we all know, like he just said, if the woman's okay, we can say everybody's okay. And what we're seeing right now is like, so people are going so many hardship. When I said it earlier, when it comes down to education, to be more specific, in the immigrant community, the African community, West African community, the reason you see crime going on, and we get shocked when we see on TV, names comes out, Jallo and so on and so forth. 20 years ago, we weren't seeing that. So there's a reason for it. And the fact, we're not saying we're being left behind, but we know that maybe there's a lack of communication. Like she said early on, we need more information. And since the mayor is here, now we're seeing how much he cares about community, ethnic media, that the message will go there.
Yeah.
It's not always just thinking about that, all the messages, it's on New York One and so on and so forth, everybody's singing. It's not the case. All I'm trying to say, what we're trying to do is not just doing our job as media, but we want to help our community, and we want to help, the administration, because if they're okay, we are okay.
Right.
With Donald Trump, we were all scared. What's happening right now, we don't know what's going to be tomorrow, what's going to be the outcome. But in a way, we're scared because we know he didn't care so much, and he was straightforward. When he said, let's take America back again, we don't know what he meant, but in a way. But what I'm trying to say, what the message can you give to our ladies? and maybe to make them feel comfortable. But right now it's really scary.
Yeah, and I think it is what so many of you have said is partnership. Join us, right? You know your communities better than anybody. You know what messages are going to resonate, and you also know what information we need so that we shape policy and programs and resources so that they achieve the goal. One of the things that the mayor has talked a lot about is like sometimes, you know, like there's a crisis and people just start doing stuff, right? Like, they call it like spray and pray. Like, we're just gonna throw out a lot of things and we just pray that it'll work. We're trying to be precise and intentional, understand, like you said, 20 years ago this wasn't happening. It's happening now. Why? What are the things that have broken down? Where are there opportunities to intervene specifically so that we can address the actual real problem that we have today? And so you all know what that data is. You all know the why. You all know what the specific things are. And so that's why we are creating this opportunity, as you said, and this really Jose's vision. I mean, even during the campaign, I remember I could hear like you all are the outlets and the mouthpieces for the specific communities. And so how we're just engaged in real intentional partnership to develop precision interventions, precision resource deployment is how we're gonna get to where we need to be.
Thank you.
Okay, last two questions. Javier.
I'm Javier Castaño from Queens Latino. I had many questions, but I'd like to focus on one that is a very big concern in many neighborhoods, especially in Queens, is the street vendors. The city is not being clear of what the plan and what they want to implement and when, because they keep growing and growing to the point that sometimes it's better to walk on the streets than on the sidewalk.
No, it is a big challenge that we've certainly heard significantly. We just announced, was it this week or last week? Last week, that vending enforcement is being moved to the Department of Sanitation, and they are getting some additional resources to support that enforcement, because we want to support businesses, whether if they're legal vendors, right, and they've done what they needed to do to get the permits and the license to do that, and storefront vendors who, you know, are getting licensed and paying their rent and doing all the things. So it has been a focus of this administration. We've looked at the data, we've seen, and maybe it was kind of during COVID and coming out of COVID, there was a lot of, you know, lax enforcement and education, and we were really trying to bring that into greater focus. So we want to continue to get feedback, but we've seen it as an issue. We've shifted some of the enforcement responsibilities, increased resources toward it as well. And we also, you know, want to make sure that people have a pathway to get legally licensed in order to do the vending that they are trying to do.
Sunil.
Good afternoon. I have a follow-up question on what my colleague said earlier about the Indian community, especially our South Asians. We are here from 50s, 60s, but recent immigration, and women generally are very closed, inward, they don't come out. And we have a lot of organizations which are for women. If you could organize a relationship with them, a bond with them, they can also help you to the last mile, last year, and they can come out and get help from the city.
Absolutely. And so the Deputy Mayor of Health and Human Services, Ann Williams-Isom, and the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs reports up into her, I think would be very interested in speaking about that specifically, how to make sure that we're making those connections with that particular community and women in that community as well, so that we can get, you know, the word out and make sure that we're being responsive to that community.
We have our next round.
There you go. So
Okay.
You have a lot of temples, gurdwaras,
yes,
where the women do come out, and the ones who might be in need will be there.
right.
And the ones who are fluent or working outside, there are many of those can also help.
Okay. All right. So, thank you. One last question in the back over there. Okay. One. Okay, go ahead. That one.
Hi. Felix Grant for the Taxista the newspaper, Hispanic newspaper for the taxi driver and the community. What program, how the mayor or the program for the lady work for the driver taxi, how a percent, 5% the lady work for
It's
the driver
5%,
taxi?
is that?
Yeah, 5%.
I love that. Well, Deputy Mayor Mira Joshi was the commissioner for the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and I'm sure she would love to
Yes.
figure out how to. Yeah, I have to say, every time I get into a taxi or Uber, it's a woman, I'm like, hey, I feel excited, because you're right, it's such a small percentage, and I know that there are particular issues around safety and other issues that impact women who are in the driver's seat. So I'm sure she would be interested in following up with.
We will connect you, Family will connect you.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you very much for being
Thank
here
you.
today. And before we go, if you wanna take a picture of the Deputy First Deputy Mayor, just for your stories, so that would be great to have here with the flag and that, so
And-
have good picture.
And please don't forget to sign up for the